All right, so hi again, and welcome to this week's Alertus Power Lunch, all about Alertus Console settings. My name is Brooke Petruzzelli, and I'm a trainer here at Alertus. This session will focus on navigating the Alertus Console settings, including updating the default values, enabling and disabling features, modifying security settings, and accessing support information. Today, we are joined by Sarah Gillum from the training team, who will be leading the conversation. As a reminder, this is an interactive session, so please feel free to put any questions in the chat or in the Q&A feature, and please be aware that the session is being recorded for training purposes. All right, without further ado, Sarah, I'll pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction, Brooke, and thank you everyone for joining today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can take a look at the Alertus console together. So right when you log in, it takes you to the home page here. And in order to access those console settings we're going to look at today, you can do it in two ways. If you have access to them, you will see a settings button on the bottom left here that you can click on, or you can also access these settings if you go under Configure System and come down to Settings. Both will take you to the same page. So this is where you can manage these Alertus console settings, but do note that when you make changes to these settings, they are applied immediately, and they also affect all users of your Alertus console. So it's not just for your account. This will affect everyone logging into the console. So definitely double check with your organization before you make any changes here to make sure everyone's in agreement. And you can also restrict who has access to these settings, which I will show you at the end today. But by default, only system administrators can access these settings. You will also see a link to the middleware settings page on this settings page. We're not going to go into this today. There's a lot of things on here as well. That would be a future Power Lunch topic, but we're going to look at everything on this settings page today. So we'll start by looking at these default values. So this is where you can change the default values for your activations. The first value here is your duration. So this would be how long your alert will be active in the system, unless it is canceled beforehand. So right now for my duration, I have my default set to 5. And then also for rapid activation, my default is also set to 5 minutes. So note for like custom and desktop activation, you can go in here and see that that duration is set to 5 as our default, but you can further edit that duration on this page if you want to change it for an alert by alert basis. But for rapid activation, since this is meant to be sent out during an emergency, you cannot actually edit the duration settings directly on this activation page. So if you do want to change this default duration time for your rapid activations, this is where you would come to this settings page. So for example, instead of 5 minutes, let's say we want our rapid activation default to be 10 minutes. I can change that here. Always when you change something, come down here and click save so that it applies. But now when I go into my rapid activation, I can see that default duration has been updated to 10 minutes. So that's how you can change your durations. Similarly, you can change your priorities for your alerts. So this priority will be the default for custom activations, as well as when you go to create a preset alert. And then this priority here is the default for desktop activations specifically. So right now they're both set to 5th or the lowest. But let's say for desktops, maybe I want it to be set to the 3rd. I can make that change, hit save. And then when I come into that desktop activation, I can see, oops, I actually have another thing disabled on my settings that I was going to show you later that I didn't add back. You need to have this show priority options enabled in order to see that priority on your alerts. But I will walk you through that in a second. So now that that's enabled, since I've changed my desktop priority to be the 3rd, when I come in here to that desktop activation, now I can see that priority is 3rd. And note for rapid activations, you cannot change that priority. Since this is meant for emergencies, it will always be set at the highest priority. All right, so that's our priorities. The next section here is our landing page. So this is where you can change the page that it takes you to right when you log into the console. So right now it's set at my home page, but let's say, for example, if I know when I log into the console, most of the time I'm doing it in order to send out a preset activation, I could select preset activation to be my landing page. So it will take me there right when I log in. Note, even if you have something other than the homepage set as your landing page, you can always still come and click on where it says Alertus Console at the top here. That will still take you to the homepage, even though I set preset activation as my landing page. But I'm able now to log out to show you that when I log in, now my landing page is that preset activation page. So it will take me right here, right away, so that I can send one quickly. All right, going back to those settings, you also have the option to set a default alert profile for your preset, custom, and when you go to create a desktop activation as well. So for example, if I want to use an announcement alert profile by default, I can select that, save it. And now when I go into an activation, I can see that it's already pulled in that announcement alert profile. So it's automatically pulled in these alert services, but I still have the option to further edit them, or I can delete specific ones or add others in here. That's just the default that gets pulled up. But note, even if you set, say, that announcement alert profile as your default here, for rapid activations, again, they're a little bit different because they're for emergencies. Rapid activations will always use that emergency alert profile, even if you've changed your default for your other activation types. So that's our alert profiles. Here is where you can edit your request timeout duration. So this timeout is going to be how long the client is willing to wait for a response from the server. So you typically will not have to edit this. You could use it if you want to troubleshoot some unexplained timeouts, or if you are directed to by Alertus tech support. But you shouldn't need to change this. You really shouldn't be waiting 60 seconds for an activation. So if it's taking that long or timing out before then, that might be a sign of a connectivity issue and something that you could contact tech support to get figured out. And then the last thing in this default values section is our coordinate system. So this is just how coordinates are displayed for your locations, which typically you can leave with the standard. Your other option is the MGRS coordinates here. So this stands for the Military Grid Reference System. So if you are a military organization, you could use that, but I just like to leave it on the standard. And again, those coordinates are how you can assign locations. If you come down under Configure Systems to Locations, you can see that when you go to add a location, you will add those latitude and longitude coordinates here to get it assigned. All right. So that is everything in this default values section. Next, we're going to come down here to this enable disable features. So this is where you can really control what you see on the left side here. Right now, I have everything checked. But for example, if I don't need this iPause because I don't use that, or I don't want to see this programmed alert beacon page, if I uncheck them, now when I save it, they've disappeared from the left side here. So for example, also sometimes rapid activation might be disabled by default. So if you want to make sure you have rapid activations up here on the left where you can use them, come in here and make sure that this is checked. But underneath each of these sections, there's also some additional settings that you can control on this page. So this option here to show priorities options, I had it unchecked for desktop, and that's why when I went in, I couldn't see the priority option. So for custom activation too, because this is not checked, if I go into custom activation, I don't have the option to set the priority right on this page. It would just refer back to that default priority that we have set. But if I want to be able to edit The priority I can check to show priority options. And then when I save it, that's what allows you to come in here, and now you can update the priority right on that page. And then we also have the options for preset activations to decide if you want to allow preset text override. So right now I do not have that enabled. So if I go to send a preset activation, when I select it, the text will automatically populate with the template we've added to that preset, but I cannot edit it here. So that's helpful if you want users to not be able to make any changes. You just want them to be able to send out the preset as is. This will prevent them from being able to edit it. But say you want your dispatchers to be able to add any additional information into those messages or make any changes. If you come in here and select to allow preset text override, now once we've saved it and we go back to that preset activation, now I do have the option that I can either add additional text, or I could go in and edit, say, the building number, something like this. So that would allow people to override that text in the preset. All right, and there are a couple of other sections here that I don't normally have enabled. For example, if you haven't seen this iPause open activation before, this is what would allow you to send iPause alerts if you have that enabled. But iPause, it stands for Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. So it's that national system that allows authorized public safety agencies to send out emergency alerts to the public. So if that's something you're authorized for, you can enable that here. You also have the option to enable this programmed alert beacon activation page if you would like. And this can be helpful because you can program an alert to be sent out from an alert beacon, even if that alert beacon is offline. So you can program them to activate when a certain aux input is either activated or closed, or it deactivates or opens. So then you can decide what alert message and delivery methods and recipients you want to program. So then this alert would be able to be sent out even when that beacon is offline, that alert beacon is offline. And then another page here that you might not have seen before is this Map Operations Center. So if you have that enabled and you come in here, this is just a really good spot for you to see a bunch of helpful information. For example, you can see some system activity. So you can see I have a lot of configuration changes since I've been playing with those settings, but you can see what's going on in your system here. You can also see your locations and the devices at those locations on this map. If you have your HPSA systems set up, there's links to the HPSA systems and the HPSA2 dashboard here. And then this is something that's really helpful. You can go ahead and send preset alerts directly from this Map Operations Center. But this is helpful too, because if you click this pop-out icon here, you additionally have the option to override some preset alerts. So I can make changes to what I have configured. For example, these alert services or the recipients, I can modify here for the preset before I send it. If you want to make changes right on this page before you send out a preset alert. So that's just a helpful thing to know exists here. The last thing on this side is your server update notification. So if you have this enabled, then it will display a banner on the top of the page just to let you know that a new version of the server is available to download. So that's that enable and disable features section. And then if we keep scrolling down, the next section is security. So this is where you can really update your security settings for your server. So for example, if you enable this enable very strong user passwords box, that will require your users to create a strong password, which it says here that password would have to be at least 15 characters long and fulfill all of these criteria. And note, if you do enable this, then for existing users, the password requirements are only applied when their password is changed. So you could decide you want to enable this. That wouldn't invalidate pre-existing passwords. It would just apply those restrictions or requirements when they go to reset their password. And then you can also allow browsers to remember passwords if you would like. And then this one is important too. You have the option to allow concurrent user logins. So as it says here, this will allow more than one instance of the same user to be logged in at the same time. So that's something that Brooke and I do for the training team. We have a training server and both of us share the admin login account. So if you want multiple administrators to be able to share one admin account and have them still be able to log in and make changes and use the system at the same time, you can enable this to allow that. And also, if you didn't want that, if you wanted every user to have their own account and you don't want multiple sign-ins with the same account at the same time, you can disable that to prevent it from happening. Then next, you can set your timeouts or your lockout durations. So for this user session timeout, that's the number of minutes that would elapse before the user's automatically logged out. So right now, if I'm inactive for 30 minutes, it will automatically log me out of the console, but I could update that to be however long I wanted. And then this lockout seconds is 10 set right now. So this is how long a user would be locked out if they failed to log in successfully. So I also have my consecutive login failures that you can set here. Right now it's set to 3. So that would mean a user, when they're logging in, would have 3 attempts to get their credentials correct before they log into the console. If they do not get it correct within those 3 times as it's set now, that's when it would initiate that 10-second lockout. But you can decide if you want the lockout to be longer or you want more or less attempts to log in. Just ways that you can update those security settings. And then we only have a couple more things here. The next one is this support page. So this is where you can really edit what users see when they click this support button here. So you can have the option to enable Alertus support, show your organization's support, where you can add all of this information so people have someone to contact within your organization if there's any issues or questions about the Alertus system. And then you also have the option to show the customer resources section, which I have all 3 of these enabled right now, and I can show you what they look like by clicking on this support button. So here is the Alertus support that will come standard with this information if you enable it. So you'll see here there is a support email and a link to submit a support ticket, as well as our technical support lines, and then this remote support option that allows you to send logs directly to Alertus support. And then if you scroll down, this is that customer resources tile that we enabled with links to our customer portal at help.alertus.com. And also you can access the most recent release notes about any updates, and then our social media here as well. And then this tile is where you can edit your organization support. So you can decide what you include in this tile. Right now I have my email and a phone number, but you can edit that again in this settings page for your organization support. So for example, if I wanted to add instructions, I could say use this information to contact someone for help. I could type that out here, save it. And now when I'm looking in that support section, I have this direction up here now. So it's very customizable for your organization. And then the last thing I wanted to show you on this settings page is our login banner that you can update. This is the banner you see under the login screen when you go to sign into the console. And this is a preview of what it will look like. So right now I have my login for my demo, which if you want to have, say, like a standard preset only user login for your users, you could do that here, or just have any updates or information that you want them to see on the login page. So maybe I could edit it to say use these credentials to log in. If I can spell it correctly. You can change it here, and then you can preview it when you go to save it. I can come down into that settings and I can preview what the banner will look like. And then I could also show you the banner if I log out and then hit to log back in. This is that banner that we're talking about. So this is where you could put that custom message for people to see as they go to log in. All right, so that is everything I wanted to show you on this settings page. Again, typically only system administrators will have access to this login or to this settings page because it is under the configure system settings. But you can choose to give specific users access to this settings page if you would like. I can show you where that lives. If you go under configure system and then come to users and access rights, this is where you can really customize what you want your users to see in the console. So at the top here, you can see all of the users that have created accounts. You can also see if they're enabled to be able to log in and what their role is, and then optionally if they have any restrictions. And then coming down here to user roles, Alertus comes standard with these 3 types of users. There's the admin, which is the highest level user with full permissions. There's also a dispatcher user that can send out all those activations and view the reports, but they cannot access these configure system settings by default. And then there's preset only users that can really only see those preset activations and maybe view some reports as well. So typically preset only users and dispatcher users, they will not have access to this settings page. But if you want to give them access, you could come in here to edit what they see in the console. And under this configuration setting, if you come down here to this settings box, that's where you could enable access to these settings in this middleware. But definitely be careful with that because again, anyone that has access to these settings could make those changes that would apply to everyone. But I do want to log in as a preset only user just to show you what it would look like if you don't have access to these settings. So I'm going to quickly open a new incognito window to log in to the same console, but this time as a preset only user. So then when I hit login, because I don't have access to those settings, I don't see that settings button or that middleware button down here. I will only be able to access that support page. So you can definitely control who you let make changes to those settings. But I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And that was everything that I had to show you about this settings page here. It looks like we have about 7 minutes left. I know Brooke's been keeping an eye on the chat if there are any questions. Now would be a great time. I'd be happy to answer anything you might have.
Great, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing all of this settings part. Yeah, feel free to put things in the chat if you have any questions or in the Q&A. I'm also going to share in the chat a knowledge base article all about Alertus Console settings that you can visit in the customer portal. So that should be in the chat now for you to reference in the future if needed.